Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, it's a big pleasure to welcome you to this declaration of the International Year of Global Understanding. We have all three international councils represented here. First of all, Professor Alberto Martinelli, President of ISSC, Heide Heckmann, Executive Director of ICSU, and Luís Osterbeck, Professor Luís Osterbeck from Portugal, Executive Director of the International Council of Philosophy and Human Sciences, CIPSH. I take the opportunity to give an introduction to the whole program of the International Year of Global Understanding that will be declared after my presentation by the three councils. And after that, we have plenty of time for discussion. You may ask, what is International Year of Global Understanding about? And first of all, maybe the expression global understanding needs to be a little bit clarified. Some people understand the understanding as the idea to be friendly to each other. This is, of course, also one part of it, but the most important part of it, as I try to illustrate later on in my presentation, is to make people understanding how much their own life is embedded in global processes, and not just in the biophysical sense like global change, but also in all other aspects, socially, culturally, and economically, of course. So this is my basic point, to bring people to a better understanding of their living conditions or their own lives under the new geographical conditions humanity faces today, called globalization. You may ask, why an international year? An international year is offering a platform and a tool to draw attention to major issues relevant to the majority of the world population. So it's a tool to draw attention of the general public to one of the most important problems of today. Secondly, to encourage international action for global importance and ramifications. So if you want to have a globally coordinated actions, then you really need also a global awareness of the whole action self. Thirdly, raise interest in the scientific disciplines or scientific contributions to problem solutions of general concern. So organizing the scientific logic to deal with this current situation. So the best example of an international year of the kind global understanding is the polar year in 2006. It had quite a big significance for science, but mainly for the natural science only, and it has a big public recognition. Then you may ask, why global understanding? As I said in the introduction, it's about making people aware of their own living conditions, independent of their traveling across the globe or not. If you take this example put together by Armin Reller of the scientific panel of ICSU, you can just take a screen, a computer screen, and they put all the elements that are in there, put on the map, is illustrating that if you use a computer screen, you really live a globalized reality, because all the minerals used for a computer screen are coming from all over the world. It has impacts, the production of a computer screen has impacts for regional societies and cultures all over the world by mining and all other kinds of activities, very often destroying other kinds of living conditions. And this is giving the attention to one of the important facts, that how much energy we are consuming today per head in the historical perspective. If you take the early time of Homo sapiens and our predecessors, then we can say that it was maybe 100 kilograms per day, and in the agrarian society up to 5 tons. But the big change came with the Industrial Revolution, based on the use of fossil energy, going up to 35 tons a year, and of course, with a growing world population and the growing resource consumption, this is clear, it's causing a lot of problems if we continue like that. So we need to have all the life forms on a lower energy or resource consumption. Another problem, another example is the garbage. This example is from Gordon McBain, the Nobel Prize laureate for peace and member of the steering committee of ICSU and president of ICSU. So he's putting together how one form of garbage, local garbage, becomes global garbage. And this is air pollution. We can say depending on the way we are moving on Earth space, we are producing more or less contamination of the air. We have smoke pollutants, and smoke air pollutants, even if they are very dreadful, but they're still a local problem. It stays in the atmosphere 5 to 10 days and is a locally produced problem causing local health problems. But still, in 2013, according to the official statistics, 2 million people died from effects of air pollution. And I guess that the realistic number is much bigger. This is just a statistically documented one. But the problem is that this local smoke is not staying as a local problem. It's transforming carbon dioxide, and it's going up in the atmosphere. In 2 to 4 years, it's mixing around the globe and stays there for at least 100 years. And this is one of the examples how local garbage becomes global garbage. And it's illustrating that we cannot hide anymore for the negative consequences of our own living. We cannot say, like the Europeans did, we send our garbage to the western part of Africa, and then we got rid of the problem. Maybe this problem is coming back as polluted fish or in other form, and of course it's a huge problem for the local population there. So we need to think in global context to find adequate solutions. Therefore, I would say that globalization is a new human condition, and global understanding is becoming a necessity to master this situation. We can say that in the face of global social and climate change, there is no other alternative than to think in global dimension, to think globally. This is an old sentence known since the Brundtland report in the end of the 1980s, think globally, act locally. But the point is how you can do that if there is no bridge between the global thinking and the local action. So I think one of the most important points is to build a bridge between these two spheres, and this bridge is created by global understanding. We can say, to illustrate the context, that global sustainability needs to deal with two aspects. We can say the social-cultural, because it is mainly caused by specific ways of production and way of living, and the biophysical consequences of it on global scale. But talking about it scientifically means that we need to take into account the difference between the two realms. We can say that the social-cultural world is not having the same ontological status as the biophysical. And according to this, we should take into account that social-cultural sphere and changes are linked to contextuality, and we can say that the biophysically roughly is linked to causality. But if we are not taking into account the two different status, we will not get really to the point. We can say that the social-cultural aspect of globalization has two main outcomes. This is a globalization and acceleration of our lives. And at the same time, we can say, since we have globalization and acceleration, in the biophysical world, the threats and the problems are growing in magnitude and pace. And we can historically easily understand that the two are linked together. So if you want to prevent problematic constellations in the biophysical sphere, with the growing transformation potential of the social-cultural sphere, we really need to change the social-cultural context and take into account its contextuality. To think these two parts of our existence, the social-cultural and the biophysical, together in a global scale, that's what global understanding is about. To understand how these parts are interlinked and how our own lives are embedded in global processes. And if you want to reach global sustainability, then really people need to understand how much their life is globalized and what they can do locally to reach global sustainability. So IYGU, in fact, its main goals is to promote global understanding and the respect I just tried to illustrate, and to change problematic action on its new understanding of the own life. So actions and decisions, this would be the main goal, shall yield sustainable outcomes every day all over the world. And we can say, this is maybe, you can say this may be a little bit idealistic, but at the same time we can say, if each person is contributing every day a little bit to this goal, and we have billions of people, then we can make a big change that could have a big impact. And this is one of the sentences I will come back later in my presentation in a wider context, by Eliseo Batista, one of the founding fathers of, or key figures, key initiators of the Rio '92 summit, when he's saying knowledge is the factor that leads us to change our ways of thinking. So that's mainly the scientific part and innovation part of reality. But he's adding, however, it is the understanding that leads to change attitude. So you need to change the understanding, or you have a certain understanding to change attitude and action. If people don't understand, they are not really willing to change. So we need to understand that we all live every day and everywhere, or that we are all involved in the production of global realities. And global understanding, as I mentioned already briefly, is therefore to understand as a bridge builder between the local and the global, between the social and the natural, but also between science and everyday life. So focusing on the local action for global sustainability has important implications. We have to know, we have to show people what the impact of their action is on the global scale, but also, of course, how much their own life is embedded in global processes. We have to highlight what the consequences of social practices are for the biophysical conditions of our life. And finally, we have maybe to change also the intersection between science and everyday, where I'm coming back in a couple of minutes. So global understanding, in fact, is emphasizing the cultural dimension of sustainability. It's not just a natural or a biological thing. If we are saying that the way people live, they transform nature, then we have also to take into account the cultural dimension and look at it in a differentiated way. So global interconnectedness is therefore showing people how much their life is globally interconnected, would or could be or is maybe also a perfect tool for peacekeeping. So if people understand how much the most important problems are linked to global processes and the global context, then maybe territorial conflicts are seen as no solution for the big global challenges. I know it's a long way to reach this, but I think territorial conflicts are really not contributing to the solution of the most important problems of our age. So, taking into account what I said so far, then one important point of the program is to make visible the impact of local actions for the global dimension. One example is air pollution from smoke to global garbage, and of course we can use the same logic for nearly all kinds of everyday actions. And with this, we hope to empower bottom-up movement, NGOs and many other forms engaged in the sustainability politics and policies, And the common goal would then be, together with science, moving from knowing about sustainability to living sustainably. So this would be the big step and the ultimate goal of IYGU, to contribute to changes in that direction. So the whole program has, as already mentioned, and to summarize, mainly three interfaces: to make understandable how the local and the global are interconnected, to show how much impact social actions have for natural constellations, and finally, the everyday life and science to put in a new context. The idea here, as mentioned by Nada this morning in her talk, is the call for transdisciplinary research, as it's one of the main goals of UNESCO to promote transdisciplinary research. The idea of transdisciplinary research is to overcome the difficulties and the problem of the interdisciplinary cooperation. In fact, interdisciplinary cooperation is facing the same problems as international negotiations. So each part wants to know what the outcome for him or her is before they are engaging. But transdisciplinary, the idea is that we are organizing the knowledge not on the basis of the scientific division of labor in disciplines, but we are putting the scientific knowledge in packages for the everyday use. So if you take it from the sphere of cooking, if we are cooking, we are not dealing with chemical formulas and chemical and physical vocabulary. We are saying take 1 spoon of sugar, take 1 egg, and so on. And it's completely well understandable, and we need to prepare scientific knowledge in a way that everybody can understand it and make direct use in everyday actions. So if you look at it that way, every decision on everyday life is something like a policy-making action. We can say that every decision depends on lifestyle. That's to integrate the cultural dimension into the sustainability discussion, and all lifestyles, of course, are culturally differentiated. So if you want to reach global sustainability, we need to take into account the cultural differences and to show different pathways to reach global sustainability on the one hand, and on the other hand, also taking into account the specific regional biophysical condition or natural conditions, and that we need to find adapted ways of living to the natural conditions. So, taken together, a second big programmatic point of IYGU is emphasizing the cultural dimension of sustainability and to look for local individual choices, how to shape global change and how to reach global sustainability in culturally differentiated ways. And all this is put into the big basic conviction that change must come from the bottom up as well as from top down. Top down is one point, but real change, I think, needs to reach the bottom, and it has to be implemented there. That's why IYGU is looking to illustrate the global outcome or the global impact of everyday action in form of everyday activities, embodied everyday practices. The basic idea is that every action is socially and culturally and economically embedded. Wherever you live on the planet, this is the basic condition. But the social sciences and the cultural sciences, or the humanities, probably through the impact of German idealism and other ways of thinking, the bodily existence have been underestimated in the history of the social sciences and the humanities, and left it to the natural sciences and to medicine. But it's important to see that every action has also a biophysical aspect through our body. And we have not a natural environment. We have a naturally contemporary world, and our own body is is part of this world. So we are not facing nature, we are part of nature through our body, and everyday practices everywhere in the world have both dimensions, the social, cultural, and the biophysical, and we should take them both into account on the same level. And then if you are acting every day in a certain place, you can show what the global impact is and how much the local activity pattern and the local action conditions are linked to global processes. We try to publish, or we will publish, during 2016, 6 topical booklets where we put the scientific knowledge in a very easy way together about the conditions, local conditions linked to the global processes in the realm of eating, drinking, and surviving. This is a team of agricultural scientists, engineers, social geographers, cultural anthropologists, and so on, working together, showing the global impact of local ways of eating, drinking, and surviving. The same for moving, staying, and belonging. Of course, in Europe, this is a big issue right now with all the immigrants and all the people that are fleeing from the spheres of conflict in the neighborhood. But it's going beyond that, of course. It's not just on the current topic. Then housing, working, urbanizing, showing how the way we produce and how we live has an impact on the urbanizing processes. The picture we have been showed this morning of a South African city is exactly one example that you can read in the urbanizing processes, the big structures of social transformations and social relations. The fourth one is about wasting, recycling, preserving. The fourth one about communicating, networking, and interacting. And the sixth one about sports, entertaining, and recreating. How we are interlinked with all global processes. I was reading in the South African airline flying from Johannesburg to Durban, in their magazine, Angelique Kidjo, an artist from the western part of Africa, just mentioned that the African music influenced the whole music all over the world, and nobody takes notice, nobody is noticing it. And I think this is one of the points IYTU can also highlight, how much local traditions become a global, have a global impact, and I think it would be honest to tell everybody where things on the global level are coming from, and that there are recognition for this. So the programmatic aspect of IYTU will have then, as you could imagine, according to what I just said, 3 levels of where we want to work on 3 levels. It's about research, bridging together social and natural sciences, to bring the natural part into the social sciences in a stronger way, and on the other hand, to open the insights on the social cultural world to natural scientists, and of course stimulate research projects in that direction. The second point would be bring research result to all levels of classroom throughout the world, and that's maybe why it's very good that it's an initiative from the International Geographical Union, because geography classes are the only place in many countries and many societies, it's the only place where people or children learn that the world is different in different parts of the world. So I think it's a good way to have access to general education. And the third level, of course, would be information through print media, social networks, and so on. As I will share later on, IYTU will host about 50 regional centers all over the world with different organizations, from universities to ministries and so on, private sector as well. And each of these regional centers should highlight every day one possibility, one contribution pathway to reach global sustainability. And we would highlight one good example of best practice in each of these regional centers with all the cultural differentiations differentiated by regional cultures and different ways of living all over the world. Each continental, regional, and national center should present this kind of propositions, and everywhere should have access to it. This is just to mention also that these 6 booklets will also be published in the open access so that everybody wants to read it, have access without paying it, and it will be published by Springer Briefs, as a Springer Briefs. The organization of IYGU is based on a programmatic brochure that has been, you have some couple of copies with me in the New English version. We had it for the promotion process in all official languages of the UN and UNESCO, and in addition also other languages we are preparing. Portuguese is already there, German is already there, and we have it also in Hindi and Japanese. So we will have a programmatic brochure that we can distribute, and it will be available through the internet platform of IYGU, where people can upload and download materials for teaching, press informations about the 3 levels: research, teaching, and information. The organizational structure is presented here. I'm just going through the people that are representing this structure. We have so far 3 patrons: Yang-Tse Lee, the Nobel Prize laureate in chemistry and former president of ICSU; Elisir Batista, key initiator of the Rio Summit in '92; and Klaus Töpfer, the former executive director of UNEP. Advisory board are former executive directors of international years. The steering committee encompasses representative of the 3 councils that are declaring IYGU, and also other people with big important positions in science, like Anthony Giddens for the social sciences, and people from the natural sciences and the humanities from all over the world. All continents are represented. The same holds for the scientific board. We have people from Africa, Latin America, the Americas, Europe, Asia, and the oceanic world. Outreach, it's at the moment a little bit weak so far because we have the implementation. The outreach sector has to grow, but I can say that we have strong partners already for the outreach right now. We have several memorandums of understanding for teaching cooperation, for research cooperation, and since 2 days ago also with ESRI, a big player in the digital geo world representation and so on, and other partners. The IGU is maybe here not so important, but it's the applicant union with 55 full member states, and in all together 97 national committees. So we have the same logic for all the 32 unions of ICSU, and the same logic for all, more or less the same logic for the 15 scientific unions that constitute ISSC, and the 12 unions or committees of CIPSH. So if you take this together, it's quite an important, important part. Partners of cooperation, we hope still that we can cooperate in one or the other way with UNESCO. With Klaus Töpfer, we will have link to UNEP, and with the cooperation with Future Earth, hopefully also to the UN universities and to the Belmont Forum. Caterva is a big player in the private sector for sustainability. The World Business Council of Sustainable Development will be active in sponsoring opening ceremonies and similar, and then we have cooperations with a couple of research founding associations throughout the world. Just to give you an idea about the size and the span of IYGU or its potential implication or network, if you compare it with the International Olympic Committee, I wasn't taking it that seriously so far, but there is a strong possibility that we will have a strong cooperation with the local organizing committee of the Olympics in Rio, and maybe later on also with the sustainability sector of the Olympic Games. So we can say IYGU gathers 58 disciplines and IOC 56. Member states, of course, science is not as easy to implement as sports, so there are more member states in the sports organization, but per average, there are more countries in every discipline represented than in sports. But all in all, we can say that the International Olympic Committee has about 2,800 national sports organizations all over the world. And if we take the logic of ICSU, ISSC, and CIPSH together, that would be about 3,400. Of course, we have to activate all of them, first of all. The pattern of the Regional Action Center is growing. You can see here some in black have already agreed to cooperate, and with the red ones, there are cooperations going on. But after the declaration, I guess this will go quite easily or easier than it was before. The declaration is based on these three letters of the three councils, saying, they will declare it later on, for the reasons for that and give their ideas what the impact of IYGU for them is. This is so far the map of the main sponsors. They're from the public sphere, especially in Germany, and from the private sector as well. So I want to conclude with some statements that summarize the spirit and the impact of IYGU. There will be a statement by Professor Anthony Giddens, probably to everybody know in the ISSC community, one of the leading social scientists of the present. Professor Kwanzi Lee as Nobel Prize laureate in chemistry, Klaus Töpfer as the former executive director of the UNEP, Gordon McBain as Nobel Prize laureate for peace, as member of the IPCC and president of ICSU, Adama Samazeku, former Minister of Education and former President of CIPSH, and Eliezer Batista, I already mentioned. Eliezer Batista is making the point I just said in the opening part, that knowledge is the factor that leads to us to change our way of thinking, but understanding leads to change attitude. The IYGU puts emphasis on culturally different paths to global sustainability, and that only changing individual actions will lead to change of collective action, whose result will be the improvement of the system in global scope. Adama Samazeku is putting the access on the humanities part, and he's criticizing or is asking to change from a way of, from a culture of having, of profit and ultimate exploitation to a culture of being. And this would be only possible at this point if we live more in harmony with the environment in its widest sense. And this is the reason for having International Year of Global Understanding and the World Conference of the Humanities in 2017 to discuss the theoretical basis of this change of paradigm. Gordon McBain is emphasizing the potential for future Earth, also building up the societal understanding, enabling actions to face the risk posed by global environmental change, and he's hoping that IYGU will be a supporter of the Future Earth program of the both councils, ISSC and ICSU. Klaus Töpfer is putting another accent. He's saying that with globalization process, we have to find the strength and time, and again, to also understand and to relate to the positions, thoughts, and expectations of others, and seek dialogue instead of confrontation. Professor Lee is putting the access on the complementary point of IYGU in respect of the top-down negotiations among states and international organizations. He's saying, like global negotiations on climate attack, the sustainability crisis from above, the IYGU complements them beautifully with coordinated solutions from the below, by getting individuals to understand and change their everyday habits. This twin approach elevates our chance of success against this crisis, the gravest humanity has ever seen. And Anthony Giddens, finally, is putting the point on the contradictions and the implications of globalization, saying that we are living in the most interconnected world in history, and yet at the same time, that world is driven by conflicts, dislocation, and uncertainties, an unsettling and disturbing mixture of huge opportunities and existential risk. Finding a positive balance will demand fundamental intellectual rethinking and new forms of collaboration of the sort that IIHU offers. I think these 5 statements are putting the whole thing nicely together. I say thank you for your attention.